We were just talking about the great Yankee game last night with the 9 home runs. What do you think, Nestor Cortez was thinking in that game?
Oh, I mean, that's you think about it too, like as it happened, you're like you kind of feel bad for him just because how he, kind of embraced the New York style, and now he
Yeah.
goes over to Milwaukee, and yeah, it didn't turn out very well for him. So, I mean, we've all been there before, and it's not a great feeling to be on the bad side of it, but then to be on the other side of it, it's a pretty good feeling to see those guys offensively get going this early. So it'll be interesting to see how if they can, and they've changed the lineup a couple times. Obviously, we're very new into this season,
Mhm.
so it'll be interesting. And Goldie had a smile on his face and in his interview, hitting lead off and doing that, which I don't know if he's done that in his career. I don't know if he's ever hit lead off.
Yeah, I doubt it. Well, between him and Austin Wells hitting leadoff.
And Austin Wells was the first ever catcher to hit a
Yeah.
leadoff homer.
Yeah, it's
So
amazing. Can you talk about that mindset of a pitcher for a second? Like how you just have to like forget about what happened after pitchers particularly have good days and bad days, right?
I think it's harder as a starter than it is the reliever because you have 4 days to sit on that as a starter. As a reliever, it's you have to have short term memory because you get a chance to go out the next day and hopefully have a chance to help your team win and turn the page, as we say, and get after it. So it's really different from both contexts as a starter where it's like, okay, you prepare and then now you got to sit on that. Okay, was I tipping? Was I, were my mechanics off? You watch video and you do all that. And as a reliever, you just kind of like, okay, well, I've got to turn the page because we got a game tomorrow. I mean, if he was a reliever, you turn around, they got a 12:35 game today. And so you get a chance to help the team in that route. So it's kind of different from both aspects of starting and relieving. But as a starter, that it just eats at you because you want to get out there again and get back to where you can be. And obviously, we've seen how Nestor can be and how good he can be. So it's definitely going to eat at you for a few days. But then you got to get over it, throw your pen, work on what you think you need to work on, and then get back after it 5 days later.
Hmm. Do you I guess the big question in your career is, were you a starter or a reliever? Like, do you view yourself?
I mean, technically both. Um, in that argument always comes up in conversation, and obviously more years as a reliever than a starter. But it was I got to the big leagues being a starter, then moved to the pen, and then back and forth. So it was just I don't know what I guess I've never been presented that question that way, and I never really thought about it. It was just I thought I was a pitcher, and I think that was I started as a thrower, and then I became a pitcher, and yeah, it's I don't know how I would really define like what, and obviously more appearances obviously as a reliever, but getting there as a starter, I felt like I could still do both. Um, Now it's just you were a pitcher. I think that's kind of the best way to to describe that, I guess.
Mhm, for sure. Can I run with this, or do you want to jump in here, Kenny?
All right. How do you think the Yankees are going to do without Garrett Cole or Mr. Stanton?
I think I think they'll be fine because their lineup just so deep. Obviously, getting G
True.
back in is going to obviously help. But I also think too, with what they have and see how deep their lineup is, and obviously everybody's like, well, Goldschmidt, he's older, whatever, but he's a true professional, and the man knows what he's doing, and he's going to give you not only a great first base, but he's going to give you quality at bats, and he knows what he's doing at the plate. You can't replace Cole. I mean, let's just be honest.
That's an ace.
Yeah, you can't, and that's the tough part. You got to have guys basically in light of it. You got to step up, and you're not gonna. They can't go into it and be like, okay, I have to be Garrett Cole. They still have to be themselves because you're not going to be him. And so
It's like saying, if you're in the Dodgers, Ohtani's out for a year. I got to be that hitter. I got to be like the best hitter on the team. No, just step up. Your other hitters will replace him. You got deep lineup. Just pick a guy. He'll step up.
Yeah, and there's going to have to be ones. And we'll see if Jonesy comes up. I think Jonesy will come up at some point during this year. And, obviously we've seen kind of glimpses of what he could do in spring training. I think at some point he's going to get up there. Obviously, he's a high strikeout, high reward guy. That's just kind of what he's become, and that's fine. I mean, that's kind of the way the game has changed too. There's only so many Ohtani and Judges in this world, and you can't replace those guys. But I think it's just going to be guys stepping up and some of these young guys getting the opportunity, and obviously Volpe and him now not being a veteran, but having his feet wet in so many ways where he can understand the realness of this lineup and how it goes. And
Right.
so I think it's just guys stepping up and not trying to do too much to replace guys like that. And hopefully, I mean, never heard of anything like with what Stanton's going through, so can't even explain on that. Like, obviously, it just a weird deal that he's going through. Obviously, I can deal from the Tommy John side of things, but
Sure.
yeah, it's just those guys not trying to do too much and just being themselves and going out and contributing in any way they can.
Okay. We've talked a little bit current. What's it like to be part of a unit, one unit, and win the whole thing? What's that feeling? Because you've been there.
It's one of those things that you can't really describe because it all just comes together, and it's kind of the way the team is structured. Like, when obviously we had so many additions in 09 after obviously closing down the old stadium and not making the playoffs, and then
Right.
going into the next year and adding C and AJ and Tex and Swish, and getting really some young guys that really stepped up, and like Cervelli and in that, and then Gardy and
Damon.
yeah, and
Yeah.
Johnny's weird ass. But yeah, and so I think it's just it comes, and we had, I think, 13 walk-offs that year, and that was kind of our thing. And it was just the accumulation of so many different personalities, and obviously still having, Andy and Jorge and Derek and the
Yeah.
core of kind of what those teams were, but then bringing new personalities in. And
Yeah. I mean, for those guys, it was the last run. Like, they were like, this is it. And it's like, let's win for George.
well, yeah, and then to christen
I
the
know
new
Charles.
yeah, to christen the new stadium with the first year it opened to win was pretty cool. And
Yeah.
to be a part of both of those, and just the storied history of the old stadium, and being able to play in both of those was an honor. And to close out one, to open another one,
Yeah.
and to be able to create that legacy of the new stadium. And but it's just, the feeling is like you're never out of a game. Like, you never, like, even when we were down, we never felt like, and we had a terrible April. We had a
Oh,
terrible
yeah. I remember that, April.
Yeah, we didn't start off great by any means.
But
So
it's like, not sometimes, like, even the team that wins the Super Bowl they have like a terrible first 2 or 3 games, and then they put it together, and it's like boom, they could be unstoppable from game 2 on.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's ebbs and flows, and with baseball, I mean, obviously we play 162, so you're gonna have those stretches, and that
Sure.
happens. But we never felt like we were ever out of a game. There was never a time we felt defeated, and then we just knew the guys that we had and the leadership that we had. More importantly, with all of those guys that have done so many things, it was pretty easy to rely on one another. And I think that's the biggest thing is you trusted the guy behind you, you trusted the guy coming in after you, you trusted the guy next to you, and I think that's what builds winning culture is just the trust in one another, knowing that they have your back. And the one thing I think a lot of people don't really take, because they only see what the product is on the field. They don't get to see the fact that everybody, we're going to dinners together, we're going to each other's birthday parties, and
Right.
just the culture that it creates, where it's just not, hey, I'm just here to play baseball. We're here for one another.
What
And
when you're one unit and you're all one thing, right? And you're winning together, you got to hang out together. It's like you're kind of family in that sense.
well, you end up spending more time with them than your own family, really, when it comes down to it. So,
Yeah.
and then it's just like anything. It's like as soon as the season's over, I was like, I don't want to see you guys. I just want to go home, hang out, and chill. And so, but it is a unit. It is a family, and I think that's the important part. Where if you have that trust and you have that family feel, it breeds a winning culture. And you see it in teams, and you hear the stories, and everybody's like, oh yeah, we hung out here, we did this, and
Right.
and people don't see a lot of that. And that's kind of the one thing where you see the product, like I said, but you don't see what goes into that product. Like, obviously, getting there early, hanging out. When we we'd get off the plane, and it's like, hey, let's all go to dinner. And you'd have 10 guys at dinner, and thank goodness I had a bunch of older guys so that they could pick up the tab, which was always nice. But then you become the old guy, and then you start taking guys out after you start signing a contract. And man, some of those bullpen can get expensive when the boys know that you're paying.
That's
And
right.
so, but that's just what it is. And that's kind of, I was fortunate enough to make the playoffs every year but one of my career.
Wow.
And it was
It's a good
just
record.
yeah, it was awesome. And obviously spent most of my time in New York, but the other teams that I played for would, it was that dynamic. And that really breeds winning and believing in each other, and knowing that you have trust, and like, all right, we might go through a skid, we might lose 3 in a row, but we're going to be able to come back and do things and get to the position that we want to get into. So I think that's a huge part of it.
All right.
And it's something that you can't really take for granted because, I mean, I have a daughter going on 14. She's never seen the team win, and we both have our number 62 jerseys, by the way.
Yeah.
But it's a long time away, and it's like there's been some good seasons, but
Yeah.
it's still,
It's just always. I mean, it's been since '09. I mean, it's been 15 years,
Right.
and my son he'll be 19 in 3 weeks, and it's, I mean, I guess kind of a weird way. Carter's only seen winning
Yeah.
since he's been a kid,
Yeah.
and his college team that he's playing for now, they're in the top 25. The football team, they just won the national championship. And so, like, he's kind of been around it, and I think he takes that with him, and he understands,
So
what
he plays. So I was going to ask him. Well, they told me that he's a kid in college. So he plays football. Does he also play baseball?
No, he just plays baseball.
Okay.
But just being around a winning culture and like their basketball teams are really good, and they're obviously their baseball team is
Right.
good, and so
Has he ever been to the College World Series?
he has not yet. He's only a freshman, so
Okay.
I mean he's been there with me, but
Yeah.
other than that, no, he hasn't been yet. So we'll hopefully he gets that chance. It's an experience, and
Yeah.
I was fortunate enough to be able to do both in college and in
Yeah.
the big leagues. So it's definitely fun on both ends of it. I can tell you that much.
All right. I'll get a little current. Which American League team do you think could give the champions, Dodgers, a run for their money? Like waiting on the other side could maybe take them. What teams do you think would be able to do that by October?
I think there's a lot. I think the Yankees are one.
Okay.
Just I think their lineup compares very much to what the Dodgers are.
Better than
Uh,
last year, because remember last year they came up a little short. A
yeah,
little short. Well, they
and I
made mistakes that you shouldn't make, but
yeah, and I mean it happens.
right.
We've seen, and we can all go back to certain instances last year with, obviously Judge dropping the ball in center, Garrett not covering first. Like there are certain instances you
But
can think of.
I kind of agree with Marks. They kind of didn't belong there anyways.
I mean, there's
Kind of.
we can say that every postseason that there shouldn't be teams there,
That's true.
and you get hot at the right time, and
True.
that's something that I mean we've seen it with the Rockies when they won 23 games in September to get into the playoffs and end up going to the World Series. But so I think it's just on paper, obviously it's going to be the Dodgers 100%. Like if
Right. Right.
but this game's not played on paper.
Right. But I think the Yankees' new lineup is probably better than last time.
I think it's deeper and
Yeah.
I only say that because now you have Austin Wells who has a year under his belt. You have Volpe who does these things, and obviously you lost pieces of it, and obviously you can't replace a Soto. I mean that's just let's just be honest about it.
Right.
Um, but I think with the pieces and the guys that have experience and the understanding of what it takes, and then also too kind of on the other end of it is what it feels like to not get there and to know and be like, okay, I need to be better. What do I need to work on? And we always do that in the off season is try and figure out, how do we make that next step? How do we not fall short, right? And so I think with the experience that these guys have now and getting close, they'll take that into regard because there is something to be said about, having not only a winning mentality, but obviously being there and understanding what it takes and
True.
coming up short. And I think it would be, I would be remiss if I didn't say I want it to be the Dodgers and Yankees. I mean, but I think you get a healthy Spencer Strider, a healthy Acuna from the Braves. I think that obviously us getting Max and then them losing Max is in our favor. But I think
Yeah.
they're a team too that maybe could pull off, beating the Dodgers to get into the series. So I just
Hmm.
think there's
So
so
it's
much.
possibly the Dodgers' luck at repeating could end in the NLCS. Possibility.
I think it could, and I just think
Oftentimes it does wrap up there when another hotter team pipes up and goes, yeah, you ain't going nowhere.
yeah, and I mean it's tough to repeat. Obviously, we haven't seen it
Yeah.
since the Yankees, so um, but I think there are teams, and I think there's so much parity now, and obviously the way that baseball is shaped up, and everybody will talk about the Dodgers and deferred money, and you know I think it's interesting how they did it, and everybody can do it and it's talked about, but I just think there's going to be so much parity in the game that it'll be tough to see the Dodgers repeat because I just think there's so many good teams that have the
Yeah.
opportunity to knock them off.
True.
You know,
We'll have to see what happens late December, early October. Who's in it? Who's hot? Who's hotter than the Dodgers? And who really ends up by the end of October winning the whole thing? We don't know. It could be the Dodgers. It could be somebody that nobody expects, and that's always out there. Okay, you can be candid since you don't work for them anymore. What's your overall opinion on Hal Steinbrenner? Since you don't work there anymore, you can be candid.
Just now being able to talk about it and see it from afar, and I got a little bit of Hal, and Hank, God rest his soul, as well as his father.
Right.
I think he does things a little bit different. Obviously, cash is still there. Not really much has changed in the front office. So I don't think it's really changed much. I think obviously with some of the things that they are changing, obviously facial hair being one of them.
Yeah.
I think it is changing a little bit in the direction of what the times are now. And I've had this conversation with plenty of people, and they're like, well, nobody turned down, and he even said in a press conference, nobody's turned down a offer from us or even talked to us because of facial hair. Well, that's a bold-faced lie, because I know personally, and obviously I won't dime any of them out,
Right.
where they're like, I'm not coming because I don't want to shave all the time. And there are some people that's just part of what they are and who they are. And so
Right.
I think times are changing, obviously, and I think we're seeing that a little bit. And I'm not saying, I asked all my fans on Twitter or X, whatever you want to call it, and
Yeah.
it was kind of 50-50, really. It was people loved the old school, like, hey, this is what we do, and obviously
Right.
the other half was like, let them be them. Like, if they don't want to shave, then I mean, you see what everybody does when they leave the Yankees. They all grow beards.
Yeah.
And that's what happens. So it's
Or if they were on another team before, they had the beard,
right.
and then they shave, and then they're not on the Yankees anymore post, and they're on a new team and beard.
Yeah. And so
Yeah.
I think obviously there are things I would do differently. I don't like how we never do anything at the trade deadline. That's one thing that I think that they could get better at.
Right. Well, if they're close, well, there's teams that are going to be sellers, and maybe they'll be some buyers, and they fill some holes that they need. Hopefully.
Yeah. I mean, you always think that, and then so you end up getting a reliever that nobody knows about, and they're like, "Oh yeah, they made a move," and you're like, "Well, who the hell is that? Like, I don't even know who that is." So yeah, it'll be interesting to see how this
Since
folds or
since I
doesn't.
don't really work for them, I feel like George saved baseball, and Hal has kind of flushed it down the toilet and doesn't really care about it. Oh, if they make the series, then he'll probably say that, oh, this is great, I care about it. But overall, if you're only making it twice in the last 10 plus years, how much do you care about it? George would be fuming if he only made it that much. He would make the moves, spend the money, and get in the playoffs and the series way more than once in 10 plus years.
Well, I think too, it's you obviously seen over George's career,
Yeah,
what he did, and he was changing things up all the time, and sometimes sometimes it didn't work out. When he signed Kevin Brown and Randy Johnson, mind you, Randy Johnson didn't get off on the right foot, but he won 17 games in a row. He won 17 games 2 years in a row. but
right.
obviously pushing down the the media
Right.
guy when he first got to New York wasn't off on the right foot.
Right.
But so he's done that before, and everybody was like, "Oh, you guys won in '09 because you bought it." Well, now everybody's going to say that about the Dodgers too,
Right.
True.
and it's
I had a question for you in terms of I mean, I actually want to talk a little more about like you, the person, and your path. But as a pitcher, can this team win without a third baseman? I mean, they really got nothing. I saw that guy Reyes last night, and I'm thinking about Peralta and DJ, and I, I mean, third baseman is so important to like the function of what you guys do, right?
well, I mean, every position is important. I mean, if
Mhm.
we're going into it, yeah, could there have been a move? I don't. There were options. I don't know realistically if some of them would have worked. Uh,
They can maybe pick one up in the trade deadline, hopefully.
Right, but it's like a real hole right now. It's like
True.
I would worry every time the ball goes to third base. I mean, really.
yeah, I mean, you don't really know, and I mean, we've obviously seen Jazz make plays at second in the first couple games, and so I think it's. I wouldn't say a black hole. I would say it's a hole. I wouldn't say it's fully that dark. um,
Right.
but no, it's a huge position. It's if DJ can be a shell of what DJ is and what we've seen him be, and he's a great player. And just if he could be half of what he normally is, I think that'll be fine. And I don't think it'll necessarily be the black hole that people think it is, and finding somebody. And who knows, somebody may step up, and it's so early, and like we all have these, I wouldn't say false pretensions of like, oh well, they're not going to win because they don't have a third baseman, where somebody's going to step up, like I said earlier, where it's like, okay, this I can win this job, I can step up and do this, and just be myself, and then earn my way into this position and play. So I think that's a huge part of it. And I think it's a challenge too to some guys where it's kind of, I guess, instead of saying it as a black hole, it's kind of an open position for guys
Fair enough.
to
Yep.
be able to step up and be like, okay, let me take this. Let me take this up and step up for the team, since we don't truly have a third baseman, and help this team win.
All right. Can you believe Soto asked for a luxury box?
I mean, yeah, that was one thing that everybody was talking about. I was like,
I
oh,
mean, 750 million. I tell him, you can't afford a luxury box when you're getting paid 750 million. You can't buy your own?
I mean, every team has a family box, so I don't, I don't. If you want your own, I guess, yeah, just go buy one. Like, you can technically write it off as a business expense if you
Right.
really wanted to.
Doesn't Judge do that? I mean, Judge.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of guys do. I mean, literally, there would be certain games like when I would come back, and when I was starting, and we would come to Kansas City because Kansas City's the closest to us in Nebraska.
Hmm.
I would just buy the box
Hmm.
so that my family could sit in it and do whatever, and hang out. And yeah, you just pay for it for the game.
Yeah.
Obviously, I don't know what it is for the year, and I
Hmm.
mean, I bet it's not cheap, but when you're
Right.
getting paid that much, it's I wasn't even getting paid that much, but it's like I can afford to have my family in the box for a game.
Hmm.
So yeah, it's always interesting how these things get either first of all come out, and second of all get blown out of proportion. Like that wasn't the end all to make all that, like, cut the deal. And and then the other one was, oh, they didn't take care of Soto's family and what have you. And I'm like, I've been around the Yankees family enough. They, like, literally, when I went to see him play against Kansas City, they took care of me. Like, so I know, and I've been around it where that wasn't the end
Yeah.
all to break all.
Hmm. Um,
Okay. Well, go ahead.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I just want to talk about you as a person a little bit. You know, you kind of come from, I mean, your path from Nebraska to New York. I mean, you come from like humble upbringing, let's say, and it's like, you worked for everything you had to get here, to get there.
Excuse me.
Kind of talk about that a little bit. I mean, because that's like a lot of people don't know that about you or appreciate how much it took for you to get there.
I mean, for me, I grew up loving baseball. I grew up a Braves fan because in Nebraska we got TBS, so we got to watch the Braves every day.
Right.
And my dad loved baseball, and he taught me old school baseball to keep like old school scorebook, and that's just something that he did. And I think for me it was one of those things that my dad could never do it, right? And so I always wanted to work hard and obviously make my dad proud. And then becoming a father myself,
Right.
you want to show them what it takes to get to where you want to do. And it's tough to make it to the big leagues. It's tough to get to the next level, and it,
It's,
it it's not easy. And
it's
you know
multiple hurdles.
yeah, it's I mean there's so many things. And God rest my dad's soul. And he just passed. And so I've been thinking about it a lot, and talking with Carter, and things of that nature. And it's just like, you can have talent, but hard work doesn't take ability. It takes
Sure.
effort, consistency, and dedication to getting to where. And if it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out. But you don't say that you didn't work hard enough to get there. And
Sure.
sometimes it's I was in the right place at the right time, and
Mm.
that obviously helped.
That-
But also
that's
I worked my butt off to get in that position. And my goal, like, I mean, I started at Division 2, and then end up getting drafted. And my goal was, honestly, in my first year, because they told me I was going to start in high A, I was like, if I get to double A in my first year, I go, that's a win. That's my goal. And I
Okay.
got there, and everything just kind of just kept building from there. And I got to the big leagues faster than anybody in the Yankee history. And
Wow.
but it was just, I mean, I spent less than 3 months in the minor leagues before I got called up. And
Wow.
it for me was, it was always, I always thought about my father and how hard he worked and what he sacrificed with the limitations that he had, where I never rested on the fact that, okay, I can throw 100. Is like, I still have to work, I still have to run, I still have to lift, I still have to make sure that I'm. And did I make my mistakes? Did I have bad years? Did I have good years? Yes. But that's life in general.
Everybody makes mistakes. Everybody has bad days, bad years.
And that's the
It
thing.
rolls along with it.
100%.
Yeah.
And that's just, I always just thought about my dad, really. And it was like, he can't do these things. He can't just, get up and walk to the bathroom. And I could never complain. And the one thing I always go back to, I had bone replacement surgery in my knee my sophomore year of college. And I had to get, and my ice pack had to be rotated like every 3 hours after surgery.
Wow.
And I'm sleeping on the couch, and here comes my dad walking on his crutches with my ice chest in his teeth. And I'm like, Dad, what are you doing? I can walk in the kitchen and do it myself. And he's like, no, it needs to be done. And from then on, I was like, I will never complain about an injury. I will never complain about having a bad day. And my dad never asked why. He got polio in the epidemic in 52 at 8 months. And so I just, from then on, it was always just like, push through. I mean, I pitched with a blown elbow. And I'm like, I'm not going to complain. Like,
Right.
yeah, it doesn't feel the best, but I'm not going
He's
to.
giving you your ice pack with crutches. He didn't complain, right?
No. He's like, I
No.
was like, Dad, what are you doing? And I had my alarm set, and I was like, yeah, I'll just go grab it and do whatever. But nope, here he comes, and I'm like, all right, well, now I can never complain about a hamstring or an elbow or something else. So, but no, it was an unbelievable journey. It's been fun, and the coolest thing now is watching my son go through it, and he's going through some shoulder issues right now, and I'm just like, hey, we'll get it done. I go, just push through, make sure you get your work in, make sure you do your rehab, make sure you get all that stuff done. So it's just it's so different now being the dad and not having my dad, and like being what my dad was to me, to my son. And so hopefully I can be half as good as my dad was to me, to Carter, and hopefully it turns out, in the way that it did for me. Odds are it's probably not going to, because that's just the way the odds are. But I can only do the things that my dad did to teach me, to put me in the best position to do for Carter as he did for me.
All right. I want to get both your thoughts on this. The passing of the legend Bob Uecker, who died recently.
It was I retired. I was in spring training with the Brewers, and I retired from there. And just hearing his stories, obviously the legend that he is, and the iconic voice there. I mean, there's so many iconic voices that we've had in the game of baseball that obviously have left a legacy in so many ways, that just portray the game in such a different way, in such a different light. And I think there's obviously Vince Scully comes to mind, and I would always love, after the game, I know I'd get a West Coast Dodgers game that I could turn on and just listen to Vince Scully and fall asleep.
Excuse me.
And so just being able to have that, and with obviously opening up with the Brewers, and with Uke and his stories, and just his love and passion for the game, I think it's going to be missed, and we obviously we miss those voices.
It's like Bob Shepard.
Oh yeah, I mean, unbelievable. And I just, like I said, so fortunate to be able to be announced by both of those legends.
Yeah,
and how much they're a huge part of the game, and how much we see what these play-by-play commentators become a part of the game, become a part of the team, and become part of a legacy of what they have done. It's and Simsey's going to be great for the Yankees. I think he's great. And so it's awesome to see how much they affect the game without even playing the game.
All right. How did you come about to get hired on the network, since that's kind of a new thing in your career?
I'd had shows before. Actually, I started on the Dan Le Batard network.
Oh, okay. I've heard of that name.
Yeah, and so we were kind of a more football-driven platform, I guess. We actually won Football Podcast of the Year 2 years in a row. And then I started one here at home, and then I did a show with them one time, and it just kind of grew from there, really, honestly. They're like, "Do you want to do this?" And I was like, "Well, I've been doing it." And it was more locally that I was doing it on a regular basis. And obviously with my platform and the followers that I have, and all that, and I was like, well, I kind of want to reach a bigger market. And then kind of just started this, and with the group we have now, and it's an unbelievable group. We have a great time. It's fun. And we get to cover all sports, and it's made me a better sports, because I love sports. Obviously, baseball is obviously my forte,
right?
But I've been able to look at games certain ways now that I wouldn't necessarily if I didn't have to talk about it. And I just try to look at it in the grand scheme of things. It's been educational for me in how I look at things differently. Obviously, baseball, I've always been very just break it down. Like when people get mad, they're like, "Oh, baseball's boring," and I'm like, "Yeah, because you're playing checkers and we're playing chess." Like, you always have those arguments and arguments about how I had an argument with Errol I think last week. And he was like, "Baseball players aren't athletes," and I'm like, "Excuse me, that is the stupidest thing you have ever said." He's like, "I don't think about them as the best athletes." I'm like, "Oh, okay, well that's fine. You can say that." And I let him go on a rant, and I was like, "Okay, well let's break it down here a little
Well,
bit."
that's kind of what he does. That's
Yeah,
why he's called the mouth.
100%, 100%. So
It's
you
the
just
rats.
you let him go. You let him go, and then I literally was like, "Are you done yet?" and then the rebuttal. But yeah,
Yeah.
no, it's been fun. It is literally getting into it and understanding the dynamic of kind of the reach and what you want to do and where you want to end up and all these other things. So it's and that's just the way the media has moved. It's moved into live show. Like we obviously see the McAfee show, and obviously he's more football driven, anyways. But so yeah, I think it's been fun for me. It's been a new journey where it's exciting, and you're okay. Do I have the best microphone? Do I have the right equipment? Like do I and things you would never really think about.
Okay, who do you think this season overall will be the player to watch? Everyday player and pitchers, like your every 5 day player.
Pitcher,
Overall, it doesn't have to be the Yankees and Mets. It could be any team. Like, who do you think is going to be like, wow, look at them go? They're getting the batting title and all that, or they're like, well, that guy's a Cy Young hopeful.
I think there's a couple guys, and I might be a little biased on this because he went to Nebraska, but Spencer Schwellenbach for the Braves, I think, is a dark horse to win the Cy Young.
All right.
He's one to look at. I think another one is Jackson Jobe from the Tigers.
All right.
For as far as and obviously he's going against Tarek Skubal, who was a Triple Crown winner and the Cy Young winner last year on the same team. So
Right.
obviously being able to learn from that. As far as everyday players, it's really tough to say because there's so many elite everyday guys that
That's
are
true.
consistently great.
It doesn't have to be a veteran. It could be a new rookie. They're rookie of the year. They could be like somebody to watch.
Somebody I'd really love to see stay healthy
Yeah.
is Byron Buxton.
Okay.
Because just the talent that he has is
What a great
unbelievable.
player,
Yeah.
And we've seen it when he's been healthy, but it's just like if he could put, and I'm not saying he has to play 150 games, but if he could get 120, 130
Mm.
and see actually what he could do would be I would love it. And there's other guys like it's Julio Rodriguez, like we've seen what he could do. Some of the younger guys, I'm interested to see after Jackson Holiday came up and didn't do well, then came up the second time and kind of, made the adjustments and did those things. I think, he could be somebody to watch. Obviously, the normal names that we could talk about, but that's boring because everybody talks about them all the time.
Yeah. All right. All right. I'll talk about this since the company's out in New York and all that. What's the biggest payroll in baseball? Do you think the Mets spent the money to get to the NLCS or somewhere like that, possibly be able to knock the Dodgers off?
I think they spent the money. I don't think they got enough pitching.
Maybe
I
they
don't.
should take care of that during the trade deadline, possibly.
That could be something, and obviously with their owner, you don't put anything past him at this. And I think it's just I don't know if their pitching depth is deep enough, and that's from start to finish. Because obviously, two guys you signed, they're both hurt, and you don't know when you're going to get them back. So, and I can't believe Frankie Montas got $36 million, but that's just that's me. That's why I said I would do things different. But
Yeah, but you're not in charge. None of us are.
no,
We can't be in that meeting and go, you should sign this guy. We're not with the Mets. We can't go, well, that guy, he's a bust. There's no way. Right. And he's gonna get injured like this week.
I think their lineup has a chance, but they're going to have to score 5-6 runs a game to win with the lack of pitching depth. And
Yeah.
Diaz is Diaz. We've seen him, but who knows what he's going to do at the end of the game?
True.
I had just one last question for you. Was it seems like you found your calling a bit with this getting into podcasts, but kind of talk about the struggle of a baseball player post career.
I think it's not necessarily the struggle. I think it's more you're so used to. I mean, especially now with kids like specifying one sport, so they've played that their entire life, and then if you get to that point, I think it's more like I miss the game, but I get to watch it, I get to talk about it, I get to do that. But what I mentioned earlier is like what you really, really miss is the camaraderie. You miss the rain delays when you're playing cards. You miss the flights and just the interaction that people don't see. And
Right.
so I think that's the hardest part is trying to create that in your second half of what your life is, because you're only going to play baseball for so long. You're going to be a human being longer than you'll ever play a sport. It does not matter what sport it is. And so then it was like, I played golf, but then I picked up golf, joined the country club. So then you had that aspect of it of, hey, we have golf league every Tuesday, and we stay and hang out and play cards, or we all go to eat afterwards. So it's just trying to create when you get to that level, it's just trying to create those camaraderie things, because you don't miss the grind of being gone all the time, but you miss those little moments of those dinners and those stories and
Right.
stuff like that. So, and then everybody finds something at some point, and it's something where it's the dynamic of how sports is talked about now is turned into podcasting, is turned into let me talk about it. And you see all these athletes that are even still playing that have podcasts and stuff like that. So I think that's the biggest thing for me was just I took some time just to be a dad, like just to be at games and homecoming and prom and all those. So you just try to, because then you get like, all right, Carter was excited when I retired because now I wouldn't be gone, and then he got tired of me. And he's like, Dad, go do something. Like, you're always at everything now. And I was like, well, damn, do I go back and play? And so it's
And
just,
then you got into podcasting.
yeah. And then that's the way it went. So sports always follows you in some way. I know a lot of buddies that like started gyms and baseball academies and stuff like that. So it really comes twofold and a full circle of somehow you usually end up being involved in some type of sports replica in whatever you decide to do.
Okay, what do you look forward to in this baseball season the most and the upcoming NFL season, since you cover both things? I cover both things.
I think baseball is it's going to be, as everybody says, and this isn't going to be me saying something that somebody already hadn't said, is seeing who outlasts the Dodgers. I mean, that's really
Right.
what it's going to be. And, to see what they can do, what they can't do, if everybody's going to be like, oh, you paid for it again, or hey, somebody
Right.
knocked you off. You just never know. And NFL, with all with the trades and everything that's gone on in the free agent signings, I think for me it's seeing how those new free agents fit in,
Right.
because football's such a different dynamic, and how it works pertaining to baseball, obviously, and how they fit in with the personalities that they have, and what's going to happen. I'm interested to see what Aaron Rodgers does. That's obviously nothing new, and obviously the Russell Wilson signing, and what he's going to do, and how they have three quarterbacks, and what the Giants are going to do in the draft. Like I just think it's all interesting to see how those pieces of the puzzle fit for that season, and
Do
obviously
you,
in baseball kind of the same.
do you think the Giants will land a franchise quarterback in the near future?
I wouldn't say this year, but maybe next year.
All right.
I just I don't foresee it happening now. But
All
the draft is I tell people the draft is it's a draft. I mean,
True.
when I got drafted, I had my son and a baby Bjorn just watching a computer. Nowadays have changed where you can watch it all on TV. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, the draft, you never know. Like, things happen,
Yeah.
trades happen. Are they going to move up? Are they going to try and
Yeah.
trade for a next year, a second round pick? Are they going to try and get 2 first round picks? So I think that's one thing that I've really like come to understand and learn about more so, is draft picks. Because that really doesn't happen in baseball much with the draft. And so I obviously, there's compensation drafts with free agents and all that. I obviously knew that, but
Right.
trading up for from the 7th to the 3rd, and then you receive another one in 2026 for that move. And so there's just a lot of things that I've learned that it has been really, really cool.
When do you think they're going to have a complete offensive line? Because that's their other problem.
You're gonna have to pay them, but I don't know if
Sure.
they will or what they're gonna do. But it's hard to get a franchise quarterback when he's covering his ass the whole time, or he's running for his life. So, I mean, they've tried, but we'll see. I mean, they're gonna have to pay some guys on the front five that are gonna be able to cover and take care of him. So it'll be interesting to see how they go about it.
All right. Back to baseball. What ingredients do you think the Yankees are missing that they could fill the trade deadline, or if they don't win it all, fill next season? Things they're missing that they could have a team that's more elite, like the Dodgers or something like that. Since you,
I
in the
wouldn't
podcasting world, you know more about this.
I wouldn't say that they're missing a lot. I really wouldn't. They filled some holes on the back end of things. I think there's obviously the one that I would that's really intriguing, and it's been talked about a lot, is
Yeah.
the Marlins are going to be out of it at the deadline. What is Sandy Alcantara going to do? Like, that would be a huge name to go get, because it might be a rental,
Hmm.
but you might have a chance to get him. And obviously, with Garrett obviously being down, and you're gonna have injuries. That's just the way it is.
Yeah.
And so,
Hopefully, most of them stay healthy.
yeah,
And
and
you're down a few. You could get people to trade deadline or next season, and then they fill all of that in for people that are on the bench that
yeah,
can't.
but I think there's really not many holes. And then if depending on what Stanton does,
Right.
I don't really mind him taking an extra time because if you can get Stanton in the playoffs,
Yeah.
we've seen what he can do, and that's been his career. And so I
Right.
think it'll just be basically band-aiding it up. I don't think there's really many holes, and then you're going to have guys step up and do things that you didn't expect.
Right.
And we'll see how Jason does. We'll see how he plays out, and obviously, hopefully, getting a full season under his belt and what he does. But I don't think there's really a lot. I'd like to see a dynamic move at the deadline. I can say that.
Right. Okay. Do you think the American League will ever get rid of the designated hitter?
No.
No,
No?
I don't think there's
No.
neither because already the National League has it. That's
Oh,
it.
the National League has that now?
Yeah.
Yeah, of course they do. Yeah.
I didn't know.
So I don't know. I've gone through all my questions. Is there anything else?
What was your favorite pitch to pitch?
Slider.
What? Slider. Okay. All right. Let's see.
That was an easy one.
Yeah, I think we got a great interview here with you, Joba.
No, I appreciate it.
Yeah, and I really appreciate your time. And
Oh, of course.
like I said, my daughter and I still wear that 62 T-shirt. So
I still get pictures. My buddy was at the game the other day, and they're still out there.
Yep, I'll be wearing it this year for sure.
Better believe it.
I got a good reason to now. Yeah. So and it's great to have you on this network. So it's good.
Did you play long enough to get a pension?
Yes.
How long do you have to play to get one? That's why.
You get 5 years is when it starts. 10 is full.
So 10 and full. So okay.
Yep.
All right.
Football's only 3.
That's correct.
Yeah, but no, I thought it was 4.
3.
Okay. All right.
Okay. Well,
did you watch any spring training games? What did you think of the
course.
Yankees in the spring? How do you think they looked?
Well, I will say this though, it was weird watching the Rays play at Steinbrenner and seeing all the Rays stuff, and because you're so used to seeing all the Yankees stuff at Steinbrenner, you're like, oh no, that is Steinbrenner, but it says the Rays. Like what? The hell is going on?
Yeah.
It's funny.
But no, I mean, I love spring training. I mean, obviously the first few weeks are kind of boring because they're, most guys aren't playing. You're seeing a lot of guys that you don't obviously know, so you get to see some names that you're like, oh, they talk about this person and this person. You're like, all right, well, I've never really seen them. I try to follow minor league baseball a little bit. I follow it a little bit more now because there's some guys that Carter has played against that are in the minor league system for some teams, and so get to watch it a little bit. But I think that's the nice thing about spring training, and what I think they do a really good job of is having those kids that they think have a chance. They bring them up in spring training, so when they actually get to the big leagues, guys that are staples that are obviously on the team, have a better understanding of who they are. And I think it just makes it an easier transition of some of those guys and how they're able to not feel so overwhelmed, when they get to the big league clubhouse. So I think that's a really good thing that they do in spring training. And it was different for me because it was my first year. So I wasn't in big league camp. I didn't even go over there for a game. And, 3 months later, I'm in the big league. So nobody had any idea who the hell I was. I mean, Mo thought I was from Alaska, not Nebraska. and A-Rod thought I was from Africa with a name like Java, and I was like, well, they obviously didn't get to know me, so they obviously no judgment handed out by any means. A-Rod bought me my first ever suits in the big league, so
nice.
but yeah, so I love that's what spring training does for these young kids to get them comfortable and not overwhelmed when they get called up.
All right. What are your thoughts on the pitch clock, since that's kind of a current thing?
It really there's some people that it really affects, but I was always one that wanted to work fast. I wanted to get the ball because if I was thinking too much, then I was in my own head and I'm like, oh, should I throw this pitch? Should I throw this pitch? No, so I don't think it really doesn't affect a lot. I think if you look at it, for some guys, it really does affect because they were slower workers. That's just the way that they went about it. Kenley Jansen comes to mind, where it's now you've got to work a little quicker. But I don't think it's obviously changed the pace of play, which they've really wanted to.
True.
I mean, every game that we played with the Red Sox was like 4 hours. But yeah, I think it hasn't really affected much. I think guys have just kind of gotten used to it, where it doesn't really affect them as much as people thought it was going to.
Awesome. Well, thanks for your time.
Oh yeah, you got it, guys.
Right, well, I have one more question. It's not really a baseball question. Being born in the beginning, early millennial, what did you take away from X? My generation, Blush's generation.
Oh,
what did you take away from X? Since you were born kind of right after and you're close to that generation.
I think it's. Yeah, I've never been asked that question. I think it's the way technology has changed everything.
All right. I like that answer.
I think
it's changed everything.
I think I'll never forget when my son, like I said, my son's going to be 19 in 3 weeks. And, he's like, oh, you just didn't come home and the internet was on? I was like, no. And then the other generation not having, like phones and, dial-up was coming in and the internet. And so I think just the technology aspect and the way we reach people and how, like, what social media and I know there's a bad light of social media, and I understand that, but there's a great light of it too. And there pictures that I get off Twitter that I would have never seen because I was playing. Like, when my dad passed, people would send pictures that I would have never seen. So I think that just changes. I think that was the biggest change, is just the way technology has moved in advance and how it's been able to link people together in certain ways. And in some ways bad, I get that. But most of it, if it used it the right way, it's a good thing. And you see things that you would never see before. And I think that's the biggest thing, really. That was a great question, by the way.
Right. If you ever want to share post TV champagne stories of celebrating after that big win, maybe you might want to come on my channel where you could say big stories like that. Like, we were so freaking drunk, and you could say that word.
Oh, yeah, I got plenty of those.
Like, maybe we could schedule it for November when the playoffs are over.
I'm in.
All right. I'll get in contact with you.
Yep, sounds good.
All right. Thank you for your time. And
anybody
that sees this interview that would like to sponsor the show, call Errol Marks, call the network. Anybody that wants to meet and interview them, go to kctv439@gmail.com. And we'll set something up.
Sounds good.
And thank you for your time. And thank you, Blush.
Yep.
And hope everybody likes their replay.
Yeah. I love that. Thank you so much, Joba.
Yeah, you got it, guys. Thanks for your time.
All right.
Take care.
All right, and Blush is here. He has When Rock Met Reggae out now. You can find it at Barnes and Noble and most bookstores that you would go to.
Mm-hmm.
Amazon, I'm sure too.
Yep, it's everywhere. We are omnipresent. Get
All
my
right.
books. There's a bunch of them back there.
I can see
What
it.
I do for a living, but really an honor to be on here with Kenny and Joba.
All right. Thank you very much.
All right. Take care.
All right. Peace. All right. I'm going to end now. All right. Thank you, everybody, for watching.